Hi, this is Kelly Penny Golden. I am here presenting my Module 5, Knowing My Community, for Newport Public Schools. Just a little bit about Newport Public Schools. For Newport itself, Newport is located on Aquidneck Island. It's only about a little over 7 square miles. 30% of Newport is actually water. It's really known as a New England resort town, and known for the mansions and as a sailing city. It's also home to Salve Regina University and one of the 9 Community College of Rhode Island campuses. It's only very small here in Newport, though. It's only one building. It's also home to the Naval War College Station and college. And it's been a major port city since prior to the 1800s and has numerous colonial buildings. Aquidneck Island itself. So the colony of Newport was founded in 1639 with 8 founders, an offshoot of Portsmouth settlement that was founded by Anne Hutchinson. Originally, it was a religious refuge to both Baptists and later Jewish people fleeing from the Spanish Inquisition in 1658. That population of Jewish settlers actually is the second oldest Jewish congregation in the United States, and they now meet in the Churro Synagogue, which is one of our historic buildings in Newport. Religion and trade were very much connected in Newport. There were Portuguese Jews that had settled in the area, also fleeing from the Spanish Inquisition, and they brought their knowledge of commerce and trade, which continued on well into the 18 and the 1900s. Newport was also highly active in the slave trade. It was one of the key cities of the Triangle Trade. And 60% of slave voyages actually originated in Rhode Island, and many from Newport harbors up until 1807, when the transatlantic slave trade was abolished with the Congregational Act. Moving on to the Gilded Age in the mid-19th century, some of the wealthiest families came to summer in Newport, the Vanderbilts and the Astors, and that tradition continued on into the 20th century with the Kennedys and Eisenhowers summering in Newport. The Kennedys were actually married at St. Mary's Church in Newport, and it was very much, the resort town of the wealthy, and that continued, probably continue really actually on to today. The area is still very much a summer resort city. We actually schedule our school year to coincide with the ending of the summer season. So we start school a little later than some of our surrounding schools. If we're looking at population and characteristics, the overall population of Newport is about 24,000 people, a little over that, and the median age is 40.2 years. The unemployment rate in Newport is about 3.7%. For Rhode Island, it's about 4.8%. And major occupations that we're looking about in Newport are management and in the service industry around sales and related occupations, food preparation and service. The next highest would be in construction, and then after that would be building and maintenance. One of the things that you should keep in mind is that some of the numbers, there's going to be some discrepancies as I go through to some of the statistics, because Newport really is known for having very much a have and have not situation set up, where we have a lot of people that are actually living probably at poverty level or below, but then we also have billionaires. So if you're looking at the median household income, you're looking at $61,679, which is actually very good, but you have to consider that's looking at the median. It's looking at right exactly in the middle, based on a very high and an extremely low. The median home value is $415,000. For Rhode Island itself, it's only $247,000. And the poverty rate in Newport is actually 13.3%. If you're looking at overall diversity, for ancestry, Irish, Italian, English, Portuguese, and German. Irish is the biggest percentage at 6.8%. And then we have the next highest would be Italian, and then English and Portuguese are about the same at a little over 6%. Moving on to our communication channels, we have a local newspaper, Newport Daily News, which is put out by the Sherman family. It was actually owned by the Sherman family until 2007, and then it was purchased by Gateway Media. It was actually one of the only family-owned papers still around, and it was the largest family-owned in the state. And they also published some free newspapers outside of Aquidneck Island. Local radio stations, we have WADK AM and then 96.5 and 105.9 FM. The AM station is owned by Astro Telecommunications. The 96.5 is privately owned, and then I thought this was very interesting. The 105.9 is actually owned by the Newport Musical Arts Foundation. We don't actually have a TV station, but the closest one is very close. It's on Block Island. It's put out by Ocean State Television, and it's Channel 69. Community groups. I had a hard time narrowing down which community groups to really talk about. We really have a lot of community groups in Newport, and we're very fortunate. If you go on our school website, the Newport Public Schools District website, you're going to see quite a few different groups. So I'm just going to highlight some of these right now. One of the big highlights I think we should mention is Bike Newport. Bike Newport is an organization that works with a lot of our youth, really kind of teaching them about basic mechanics. One of the programs they have is that students can actually build their own bike, and then it's theirs. We have the Boys and Girls Club of Newport County, which actually has 2 locations in Newport. And what's especially interesting with their program right now is they're working on helping us with our attendance at the middle school and high school level. So they have an attendance representative that comes over from the Boys and Girls Club that's helping to make connections with some of our youth who are struggling with attendance. We have the Dr. Martin Luther King Center, which provides daily breakfast, preschool, before and after school programs, a literacy and math and science camp, as well as a food pantry. We have the East Bay Community Action Group, which provides medical health services as well as mental health services, a preschool and Head Start, dentistry services. Many of these services are a very minimal cost, or in some cases, there are some events where you can go, and if you don't have insurance, you can still get some of these coverages. One of the other interesting groups that's listed here I thought I would mention in particular is the Newport Public Education Foundation. It was founded in 1991. They've done a lot of activities to enhance education in the classrooms. I think one of the most notable ones is raising more than $1 million to upgrade our middle school. Some other groups here that are of note, we have Child and Family and Newport County Mental Health, which are the 2 largest mental health services on the island. Even though they are the largest, though, there's always a wait. So that is something that Newport definitely needs to improve on. When we're looking at leadership, I'm just highlighting some of the key roles that are in leadership in Newport. Our superintendent is Colleen Burns Germain. Her father was the principal of Rogers High School. We have Kimberly Bean, who is our assistant superintendent. Her family also owns one of the large construction companies on Aquidneck Island. We have the Director of Pupil Services, who is interim right now, Robert Power. He's only with us a couple of days a week. Our former Director of Pupil Services unfortunately left to work in another town in Rhode Island. So we just have an interim person right now. Our Pupil Services is where really the majority of my work comes from, and that work is through special ed services, but then again, any of the psychological or clinical services. Our principals, we have at Rogers, we have Jared Vance. At Thompson Middle School, Laurie Sullivan. And at Pell Elementary, we have Tracy Westman. And there are vice principals in each building as well. Our community leaders, if we're looking at, having a little technical difficulty here. Our community leaders, we're looking at Newport the school committee, we have the chairperson, who is David C. Hanos Jr., and our vice chair, Raymond E. Gomes. Other serving members, we have Kathleen Silva, David R. Carlin, Sandra Flowers, Joe Ever Gaines, and Rebecca Bolin. There has been some tension between the school committee and the superintendent. They actually called for her resignation this past June because of the budget issues within the school. Superintendent Burns Germain, had explained that she inherited a $600,000 deficit that she's been, slowly helping to decrease. But this is still an issue. And actually, just more recently in the past week, the city of Newport has decided that they are going to help alleviate some of this burden for the school system. Some economic conditions to talk about. We actually have a business manager and director of administrative services for Newport Public Schools. His name is Carlos Colley. He is new to this position. He's been in the position less than a year. And then also other economic information of note. We are looking at Newport, citizens in Newport living at below poverty level, looking at 18.3%. And again, as I mentioned, some of these numbers seem to have a huge disparity, but again, there's a lot of people kind of living at both ends of the economic spectrum. In our district, we have 64% of our students receiving free or reduced lunch. 89.6% of this population is living in public housing. We have 10 public housing residents in the city of Newport. Political structure. Just wanted to give you a little information just about the past election so that you would have kind of an idea of what we were looking at to that. Newport itself voted much more Democratic than some of the other towns on Aquidneck Island. There are two other towns. You can see Newport favoring Clinton over Trump, and Rhode Island in general, Clinton being the leading vote. But one thing to note for Aquidneck Island is that as you go into some of the other cities, the two others are Portsmouth and Middletown. Middletown is probably somewhere in between, and Portsmouth is certainly much more conservative. Some social tensions. Certainly the impact of the last election has brought up some more social tensions, and especially around immigration. We have a number of undocumented immigrants that live in the city of Newport. And this is certainly, with the new election, this has certainly brought up some tensions that were underlying initially. Our foreign-born residents are at 9.6%. For Newport itself, if we're looking at crime, violent crime, we're considered the fifth most dangerous city in Rhode Island for property crime, and the second most dangerous, the fifth most for violent crime, and the second most for property crime. When you're looking at some of the racial tensions, this wasn't necessarily always the case. In 1996, we had the first African American principal in Rhode Island, actually, at Rogers High School, Victoria Johnson. And the first Black mayor in 1981 for Newport was Paul L. Gaines. He's actually the husband of Joe Eva Gaines that you saw on the school committee slide that I talked about just a little while ago. Sources of information. I feel like Newport is certainly working on its sources of information. We have the school records that are housed at the Office of Student Services, and then there's city and school committee city directory and school committee notes on the district website. Anyone can access them going on the website. They're also on the website, you can look at the strategic plan for the district. And there are some things in particular they wanted to work on. The graduation for the district, they wanted to improve. For 2017-2018 school year, it was 88%. They're looking to improve that. Prepared for success after high school, looking at 4-year, 2-year colleges, increasing reading and math proficiency, early childhood improvements, technology, um, improving technology, school climate and culture, professional development, and community engagement. Those are all items that are in progress and they're working on. And if you wanted to look at details of the strategic plan, you can just go onto the website and look at some of those. For power structures, one of the things that I think is really evident in Newport is there is a lot of connections, a lot of long history family connections. Many of the people I work with amongst the schools, and again, I'm in the middle school and the high school. If you go, you'll notice that many of the people have the same last name. So they're either siblings of, or children of, or married to a lot of the work people that staff members that work in the schools. But Newport is very much trying to increase communication throughout the community. And one of the ways they're doing that is through community conversations. Newport Public Schools received a Nellie Mae Foundation grant back in the fall of 2015. And it had 3 phases to address some of the common themes that you see listed here: community, communication, relationships, hands-on learning, and higher expectations for all. There are 3 phases to this strategic plan: onboarding, planning, and implementation. The onboarding phase was actually doing a series of phone interviews to get the best ideas for community engagement. And over 60 participants participated in these phone interviews. The results were really looking for more student voice, learning amongst staff, cross-district opportunities, staff to have more voice at the district level, and to have the school committee actually hear from each school regularly. We see much more work with this in the community conversations when I talk about the BAR grant initiative later that I've actually been a very big part of. Multicultural issues in particular, this is something that I've really worked with, so I wanted to mention it. We've had an increase in our English language learner population. We went from 53 students to 222 students as of this year. There's been a dramatic increase in our newcomer population in Newport since 2000. And one of the community groups that really helps us with this is Newport Community School. So you'll see their advertisement here on this slide. They offer ESL classes to the parents of these students. You'll see Mondays and Wednesdays. There's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. They also offer GED classes and guides to citizenship. So I think it's really important. Newport Community School actually is housed both in the middle school and actually the elementary, middle school, and high school. They have people that are there all day long, even though they mostly do after school programming. Someone can be reached from the community school at any time to help with any number of needs. But I thought in particular the L needs was something to speak to. For Rhode Island in general, more than 1 in 8 of Rhode Islanders are born in a different country. This new wave of immigration is mostly from the Caribbean, in particular the Dominican Republic, but then also outside of the Caribbean in Guatemala. About 15% of our native-born Rhode Islanders actually have at least one immigrant parent. And so again, so Newport is seeing this increase, but I think Rhode Island is as well. And to really address this, they've expanded their L services. We now have 2 full-time ESL teachers at Pell, 1.5 at the middle school, and 1.5 at Rogers. And we also now have a director of that program for the entire district. Power structure. We have a Newport Public Schools communication coordinator, Marsden Rebens. Again, I mentioned that our website is really detailed with lots of communication that you can access as long as you have access to the internet. And of course, not everybody does, but there are certainly many ways to do that on the island. So we have our own communication department. If you go on the website, there's links to various communication outlets. There's a blog with community groups. There's the Newport Public Schools app and Twitter account, Blackboard access, and community surveys. So there's a lot of information just right at people's fingertips. Measuring public opinion. Again, I thought the most important thing maybe to talk about here was work in the Barr Foundation. So Barr itself is based in Boston, and it's a nonprofit organization created by the co-founders of Continental Cablevision, Amos and Barbara Hofstetter. Newport Public Schools received a $150,000 grant initially to do some work. And then we actually, at the end of last year, with some of the initial work we did, received additional monies in the form of $300,000. And more funding can be renewed if they see that our work is really doing well. Barr itself looks at three principles: students at the center of education, schools in relationship to all learning, community as a context for achievement. Our work has in particular focused on student engagement and then staff climate and culture. How we started is we did some public interviews of a number of different people, students, teachers, and community members. We ended up interviewing over 62 people. And some of the questions we asked were, for the high school, what did we think Rogers was really doing well? What needed to change? Did students feel that they were getting or that teachers were giving a quality education? Were they being addressed by high and meaningful standards? What did students want to do after they graduated? Did the high school offer opportunities for students to prepare them for their next career? What would they like the school more to offer? And then did teachers really show a vested interest in talents and things to do with our student population? One of the things that we found is that there was a huge amount of things we were already doing that we wanted to increase, and we call that successes to scale. Some of that was, in particular, at Rogers, we have a vocational program, and we also have a criminal and cyber justice program in affiliation with the community college. So we definitely wanted to expand on that. We wanted to expand on our AP courses, our alternative learning program, our ROTC program, our connections with Newport Community School, as I mentioned earlier. So we really did have a lot to already build on. Again, when I had talked about the Barr Foundation, we really did this in 3 phases. There was the information gathering, there was a pre-planning committee, a research team, and implementation. Where at this point, through last school year, we were doing more research. We were actually visiting others who had received Barr grants, and we're doing some of the initiatives we were thinking about doing. We're going to be doing some additional research this year, and we've already started some of our implementation. We started a new advisory program and a crew program. So our crew actually now meets every day for 10 minutes. These are students that we would meet with that wouldn't necessarily be assigned to us any other part of the day, but really trying to focus on building those relationships to increase student engagement. And then our actual advisory period, which is also our crew, meets once every 6 days for 45 minutes. So the crew itself meeting every day is only about 10 minutes. And this other meeting that we do is for 45 minutes, and it's once on a 6-day cycle. So we're hoping that building more relationships with the students, that they'll be more engaged in the school experience and hopefully improve their attendance rate as well. So I know that I have thrown a lot out at you, but this is my presentation on Newport Public Schools, and I thank you for watching and listening. Thank you so much.